Hi, this is Rick Kyte with Ethics Today. This is episode 5, and today we're talking about farming, and our guest speaker is Kevin Mahalko, who's a farmer in western Wisconsin. And Kevin, could I ask you just to tell us a little bit about yourself, the kind of farming you do?
Well, Rick, thank you for inviting me today. I'm an Organic Valley dairy grazer, so we're a dairy farm. We also do grass-fed beef on our farm, and our name of our farm is Mahalko Dairy, and we also have Mahalko grass-fed beef as part of our, I guess, another enterprise we have. So we're really happy to be working with, especially like with a co-op like Organic Valley crop, and that's really, gives us a good opportunity to really match our farming production to the type of consumer demand that we're seeing out there now. So like to give you like the basics of the size of our farm, we're in northwest Wisconsin, near Gilman, Wisconsin.
Yep.
And it's about a 350 acres that we actually farm. We have about up to 40 to 50 dairy cows, and then the rest of that is young stock and beef, grass-fed beef animals. So it keeps us pretty busy. We're happy to see spring here and just ready to have the nice absolute greatest part of the season.
Right. Now, did you come from a family of farming? Is that how you got into farming yourself?
Yes, I'm still, my dad is still involved with the farm. My parents actually, he works with me as far as, we do some field operations together, like especially the haymaking and just everything around the farm day to day. He's getting up there, upper 70s, but he's still, very active, very determined to see, success on the farm and in the whole rural economy, I think, too.
Right. Yeah.
So that's kind of the foundational thing for me. We've come from a family, we're very like civically engaged, everything from our scouts to church, community, government, boards, different co-ops, membership organizations. So just trying to be very active and involved with the rural community too.
Well, we're hearing a lot about how this pandemic is affecting the food supply. And
Right.
that's one of the things I want to talk about, but also put this in the context of what's been going on, especially with dairy farms in the Midwest and Wisconsin. I know that Wisconsin lost over 800 farms just last year. Mm-hmm. And that's after several bad years of losing quite a few, especially family farms. And so what's going on with the pandemic is it making an existing problem even worse?
Right now, it's in the general ag economy, it is causing a lot of disruption. What we've seen specifically in dairy, and this is in the conventional market, it went from finally getting up to a price earlier in the year where it was, somewhat covering costs. And that wasn't the first time I think they set on average in about 5 years. So what we have is dairy has been in a state of a lot of pressure and a lot of farms leaving farming, and that's been a big rural issue out here. It's hurting our communities, hurting our schools. You can imagine just that whole chain reaction of everything a farm supports and the community that's also involved with the farm. So what we've seen is that now the market prices have really dropped, once COVID-19 hit. And just to give you a general idea, I think the prices were somewhere in the $16 range, and now the futures have been in the, under 11 at I think a couple points. So that really makes it very, very tough to plan and to be able to ship milk. And also, a lot of the disruption has even led to, like, say, when the schools close, there's a lot less milk, being consumed by the school population. So there's kind of an interesting thing happened where at first there was a rush on the grocery stores to clear the shelves of milk, and the retailers got a little bit worried. They put in some restrictions. You can only buy, like, say, 2 gallons, and then that it's eased over time, but it took a while to do that. And I think as with a lot of our food system, we have a retail side, we have direct marketing, and then you have the restaurant chain, food service supply chain. So a lot of that packaging and a lot of transportation and logistics is driving towards food service, and that had to all really shift, and it's been a somewhat of a struggle. One thing is with dairy plants, you can't just change like your everything you're producing and how you warehouse and store. Just like in a lot of business in America now, it's this really short delivery time where they want to produce a product, have it on a truck, and then get it to the consumer as fast as possible. So they're trying to eliminate a lot of warehousing, and then that causes kind of a lack of capacity in some and it really does, kind of in a time like this, we could use a little more warehouse capability and ability to shift production to
Right.
long-term storage. So, like in the dairy side specifically, things that could be done is making more milk into cheese or dry powder to store for future use. And I think that's some of the things that they're trying to get worked out. But I can just say on the farmer side, we're always typically the ones that get the the slowest increase in price, and then we get the fastest decrease. So there's never much of a lag when the prices drop to the farmer.
Right. Well, and I was just looking at like kind of what's happening with markets. So Americans, typically the average American eats out, like consumes anywhere from 30 to 50% of their food out
Right.
of the house, right? Restaurants or I guess at work or school, something like that. But now during this time, it's like dropped down to about 10%. So
Sure.
that's a huge shift in consumption, and there's no way to change all of your packaging, the bottling of milk and everything over to 90% for direct to the consumer.
So that becomes like takeout, is about the only thing that people can access on the retail side, or I should say like on the restaurant side.
Yeah.
And the retail has been just, in a sense, pretty overwhelmed in some cases. Locally, we haven't seen too many shortages, but there have definitely been some disruptions. We can see it in some of the food bank lines that are out there, and it's been tough on some people, especially those. I think now over 35 million people who have lost their job in the
Right.
last month and a half. So we really need to be very careful that we don't waste any food. I would personally like to see a much bigger change in the broader food system, but that's something that to work on now and then into the future. But in the immediate time frame here, I think we really need to make sure that we're not wasting any food and doing the absolute best we can with the system that we have right now.
Yeah. So when you were talking about the volatility in prices, that's mainly for conventional dairy farming, right? If you're a member of an organic co-op, are prices locked in for the year so that your pricing is a little more stable, and so it isn't really affected as much by the current situation?
The prices are, they could be variable through the year, but there's always these target prices, and it's in the organic market, and especially within our co-op, crop co-op, which is the Organic Valley dairy side.
Yeah.
We basically have been pretty stable, and the thing is, like, typically the organic, in the whole organic market, it's much more like consumer driven, where it's probably in like the retail markets, the grocery store, like a local food cooperative, or just it's a much more direct to consumer, not as much into the food service. The food service side is important, but it's not the biggest driver in organic. So, and I think the other thing is too, just with this being a health crisis, I think people are just getting much more interested about their health and choosing the healthiest option that they can find. So I think it's really helped the organic side to be pretty stable so far, and we hope we can continue that.
What about your beef cattle? Is that a pretty big percentage of your total operation, and how do you market your beef?
What I do with our beef is some of them we sell right directly to consumers. So I have a kind of a list of the people who have purchased from us over the years, and it's usually like in a quarter beef or maybe a half. So we have that processed at a local butcher shop, and it's all custom. It's customized to whatever however they want it done. So to me, that's the ultimate, is that if we can get more consumer connection like that. We also market through Organic Valley, the Organic Prairie side. So on that too, we've been pretty fortunate that the last one that we sent was about a week and a half ago, and there's still a market for the organic beef farmer. The one issue I've seen is that, like, our local sale barns have had times where they're not taking cattle for these sales. It's gotten where if we have a major processing plant closed down, due to COVID, the presence of like COVID infected workers, it takes the plant might have to shut down. They might have to shift the production line and test everybody, clean up, and create more distance in the work environment, and that's all very difficult in a kind of the automated type processing facilities they have.
So for your beef, if somebody's buying a half or a quarter or something, is that processed through these major plants, or is that done locally?
No, that's done locally at a pretty small, like family size butcher shop. So they basically service a lot of the farmers, the grass fed, the organic, and anybody doing custom livestock. I'd say within about a 3-county area.
Right.
So they're very busy. The market's been just going up and up, for a while. So it's been where you really have to plan out ahead and schedule in everything. And now I was able to schedule one for the end of June and then one for August. So they're at capacity.
Right.
Which I think opens up. Oh, sorry. It just opens up there's a whole lot of opportunity out there to get more, more people setting up these businesses and being trained and really doing this really great job of custom work like that.
And this is one of the things I've been hearing, is that we're seeing how vulnerable our food system is, because it operates in a very efficient manner. But if we have some closures of like a couple major processors in an area, then it has these ripple effects. How quickly could we transition to diversifying like meat processing and some of the dairy production and so forth?
I think I'll say first on the beef side, I think that would be a little bit easier actually on the livestock. Um, a lot of these shops that we work with, and we work with two locally, and we have several other options that are pretty good too. But that might be an existing family business, like the one we've been with. It's been probably like 40 years actually. Our family has worked with them or more. So that that ownership shifted to to the next generation, so to speak. The hard thing would be actually building new facilities and having somebody like trained and get certified with to be USDA inspected, to buy like new physical plant equipment. All of that is much more expensive, I think, now, like the stainless steel. It's just it's an investment. So you'd have to have, number one, some training time, for somebody that wants to get into that business, and time to get in, all the inspection and everything lined up and find a customer base. But I think that trend it's definitely been happening, and I think it's definitely going to grow a lot after all of this.
Right.
I've personally, as a smaller dairy farmer, what I've seen over the years is that as these companies, keep merging and consolidating and getting, just going from having so many medium-sized processing facilities to now we have just really a few large ones and then a kind of a mix of smaller ones. We have you look at all the children's fairy tale sayings, don't put your eggs in one basket, plan for a rainy day, all those things. We need to learn that lesson. We can't just have all this risk, put into one place. It can be efficient in one way, is that's driven a lot of the ag industry, but I think there's been a lot of external costs to doing that, and it's been this whole losing a lot of independent family farms has been one of the biggest problems. And then I think we need to get back to that more consumer to farmer connection and have a little bit more of a connection in the middle there.
Right. Yeah. And you talk about external costs. One is the external costs on our communities, where we have fewer families that are actually making a living by farming, right? So that we have a huge
Right.
increase in the amount of farms that are leased out. And
Yes.
what
I'll tell you, what I've grown up through is, I was born in 1971, so I graduated, coming out of the 1980s farm crisis. So I had a lot of my classmates, in a rural community, we had about 70 students in my class, and we probably had 15 at least that grew up on a farm. And I think there's only like 3 of us that I know of that are involved with dairy now.
right.
So it's been a huge shift. I'd say a lot of my classmates got into things like road construction. It's thankfully been a good work economy for the last I think several years. So there are some off-farm options, but I think if you go back, there's a lot of my classmates that would have liked to have continued on with farming, but it's just is such a spiral of low price and high costs and a heavy workload.
Yeah,
So
I see this as really a significant ethical problem, in that over that 50-year period you're talking about, from say 1970 to 2020, we saw huge improvements in the reduction of poverty all over the world, and that's mainly by reducing hunger, right? So infant mortality has dropped. We rarely have widespread famines anymore unless they're due to war, but it's never, I mean, we've got so much more food in the world because we're more efficient. But I was also looking at statistics like from conventional farming. Farmers only get about 8 cents on the dollar that is spent by consumers on food, which that seems like a really small margin to work with if you're trying to make a living by growing food.
Yes, it's been a real concern, you know, in the farm community for a lot of years. If you look on the Wisconsin Farmers Union site, they've got a fact sheet that shows like you know, the farmer share is what they call it.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely urge people to look at that website and get the sense that the farmer is not like in the dairy side. I would say like in the early 80s, we probably got about half of the retail dollar, and the farmer share has dropped, you know, just steadily down over the years. So, you know, that's really among a lot of other reasons, you know, one of the big reasons that we've taken an interest in organic and the direct marketing is to reestablish that direct link with our consumers that are looking for some good healthy food options. So by working as a co-op, having a lot of, you know, democracy within there, you know, we're looking at what is a fair return, what can cover costs. You know, we have to be able to not have, you know, farms that can't make a living, but just, you know, you can't afford to repair the roof, the infrastructure starts breaking down, your equipment starts to fail and probably is actually, you know, become more dangerous to work with. So there's just a whole lot of levels where, you know, the farmers really should have a better return, you know, directly from a market price. So what I'll say that I see like coming in to try to remedy this, and you know, like they'll have government programs for like, you know, commodity payments or crop insurance, and that's what's actually happened. I think is it's driven, you know, more production into these larger scale farming operations, and they're not looking at, well, what's the market, we're going to make this product for the market. They're dealing more in commodity scale, and I don't blame a farmer for doing that because you know, there are kind of limited options out there for marketing, you know, right now. But I think we need to get a lot more inventive as farmers and, you know, within this whole food chain of, okay, what do they want? What do the consumers want? We can really get diversified. We can do, you know, vegetable crops, you know, get innovative, get some new type of developments out there. So that's what I've seen actually, like in the whole grazing and the grass fed side is the grazing started out as, you know, looking around the world, you know, where were the lower cost production areas, and it was New Zealand and Ireland, a lot of places that were really more focused on the grazing. So we took a really big interest in how we could modify our, you know, we did pasturing, but it wasn't this really intensive grazing. So once we did that, we saw a real benefit. You know, we were able to kind of lower our costs, not run our equipment as much, and then we were able to get, you know, truly, we've actually got numbers to track this. Our soil is getting healthier and, you know, building organic matter in the soil. We're sequestering carbon. I think it's just a way healthier like landscape out there, having a very diverse species of crop, you know, right in these pasture systems. And we can filter water. We can really harness the solar energy, the sunlight, and have a really sustainable long term, you know, basically like a renewable energy type, you know, type farming. So we're really kind of managing a resource, not only conserving it, but I think enhancing the resource.
One of the things I've been involved with over the last few years is our local chapter of Trout Unlimited, which is
Yes.
basically a cold water conservation organization. And one of the things we've noticed is how healthy the streams are that are flowing through these pastures where there's rotational grazing. In
Yeah.
fact, it seems to really, those streams tend to be healthier than streams in which there's no cattle present at all.
I think what's really interesting is I think the farmers and the wildlife uh, experts have gotten together and really try to simulate what happened in nature, like with the native herds, the wild herds, the bison, could be elk. What what would happen like in these predator prey ecosystems? You would never have like a herd that would stay right by a riverbank or a stream bank for very long. They'd go, they'd graze, they'd come over to the stream. They might have a wolf or some other predator, kind of watching, and they'd come in, get their drink, and head out. It's the problems come when we just have animals just like fenced in right on a creek or. So I think it's been a really interesting thing to see the stream bank management get much better, with the proper use of fence and having the cattle there at the proper time. So I think I've seen exactly what you're talking about. I've actually uh, talked with Dave Vitrano with the DNR.
Right.
He was really working with the trout streams and getting the farmers linked up to do a really good job of this. So I really appreciate all that work.
Yeah, yeah, he's done a terrific job here in especially in the driftless area, but I think throughout, all over Western Wisconsin, he's done a really great job of kind of working with
Absolutely.
landowners and educating all of us about better watershed quality.
I think that's, to me, it's not even, the water systems are a huge benefit. But I think that when we look at like the holistic grazing idea, it's that we can take like kind of these abused marginal lands, where we've overplowed, we've depleted the soil. If we bring livestock back and do this in the proper way, we can start to get the ground cover reestablished, get plants in there, get a good root mass, and then start cycling and recycling and getting a lot of life back in the soil. Get our carbon sequestered through the roots. Bring in nitrogen through the like legume plant processes, and really it's even the process of how an animal's hooves interact with the soil, like creating like water catchment areas for rain. Keeping the water on our landscape and not running off into the rivers. And hopefully creating a sponge or like a reservoir right on the land. And when we build organic matter, we get a much higher water holding capacity in the soil, so we won't have all these flooding pressures that we've seen.
Well, Kevin, I want to thank you for taking this time to talk with me. And if there's like one takeaway, I would say that, even though conventional farming has done a great job of feeding more people in the world and really making processes more efficient so that food has been cheaper and kind of
Right.
lowering incidences of starvation around the world, we really need to diversify our farm economy. And
Yes.
that can bring some environmental benefits as well.
Well, one of the interesting things that I've seen is there's a much more interest in like the cover crops, even within the grain systems, and we're really promoting, getting animals back on the landscape, even within a grain system. So I think there's room. We've as farmers over time we've learned a lot. Said you go back to the Dust Bowl days, we learned a lot about conservation, and there were quite a few practices put in, at that time to save soil and protect water. And I think we've learned so much more now, and we're really appreciating like using this modern fencing technology to have the livestock in the right place at the right time, and start integrating this within other crops. Plus, I think this whole movement to like the CSA, more micro scale farming has been a huge benefit. That I'm approaching 50 years old, but I see like a lot of the young people we work with, their biggest issue is land access. They might be able to get a few acres here or there, maybe rent some, have the backyard. So there's been a huge movement in the last at least 10 years of like really learning about like homestead gardening, raising some chickens and that type of thing. And that it's just going to keep growing. And I think in one of the results of the pandemic is hopefully we have that much healthier type food system. We get our health improved, get our immune system, to the absolute, highest state that we can. And I think that's really the positive thing that we can do as farmers is achieve that type of health.
Yeah, well, that's a great way to end this session, I think. So thank you so much, and I
Thank you, Rick.
hope you have a great week.
All right, you too.
Okay.
Enjoy the green grass out there.
Absolutely.